right, let's get going, everybody. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our regular scheduled June 3rd City Council meeting. I do call this meeting to order, and as always, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll ask Sandy to read the open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so that citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Thanks, Sandy. And would you take roll for us, too?
Brian Smith?
Here.
Steve Hackett?
Here.
Deb Fensky?
Here.
Paul Hagan?
Here.
Alan Keeland?
Here.
Scott Perchatsky?
Here.
Dave Peterson?
Here.
Paul Mayo?
Here.
John Lockwood?
Here.
Jillian Peterson?
Here.
And Eric Olson.
Here.
10 present. We have a quorum.
You're saving paper today. Wow.
Trying.
Okay, next we have the consent agenda. There are no additional items to add to the consent agenda items, or to the consent agenda. So you have that in front of you. Is there any items that council would like to see moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda, where you would vote on those with one separate motion? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Lockwood, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Under the regular agenda, there is no handouts for that either. Everybody okay with the order of the regular agenda? If so, again, we would be looking for a motion.
You, with the addendum.
Okay, that is part of
Oh,
the,
yes.
okay. You're right, we did have an addendum that was sent out yesterday, and that will be included with the regular agenda. Thank you, Al.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Lockwood, that we approve the regular agenda with that one addendum that came out yesterday. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right, we're on to introductions. We have a new officer, and Chief Koch, we'll have you introduce
Nate's here.
him, please.
If Nate, why don't you just step up to the podium? This is Officer Nate Nelson. He is our newest full-time hire. A little bit about Nate. He's a lifelong resident here of Waupaca. He recently graduated from UW Stevens Point, obtaining a bachelor's degree, and he completed the police academy. And right now he's in our field training program, which is about 2 or 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks in. We do have a 12-week program, so this is Nate Nelson.
All right. Good luck to you, Nate.
Welcome, Nate.
Thank you.
That was about 4 words.
I expected a little bit more out of him.
The man of action.
I guess, yeah. All right, let's move on then to unfinished business. We have a review of our city's debt policy, and we have Brad Vergoot from Robert W. Baird here with us tonight. Brad, Henry, did you want to say anything first?
Well, yeah, I guess I could set it up. It's been probably 6 weeks since we last talked about capital budgeting, and as part of that, we talked about our debt policy, and at the request of the council, you wanted Brad to come back and re-examine maybe some alterations to that policy and how that might affect our ability to borrow going forward. So he's here for that. Should I get Josh?
Yeah, I've got just a 2-page handout or slides in our PowerPoint that I'll put up. But so, and just to reiterate a little bit on what Henry had said, first of all, I'm Brad Vergoot. For those who don't know me, I'm with Robert W. Baird and Company, and Baird has been serving as underwriter for the city's debt issuance in the past. So that's the role that Baird plays. I've been in the public finance department at Baird for about 16 years now, and I work with municipalities and counties throughout the state. So a little bit of a historic perspective on where the city was. A couple months ago, we took a look at really a comprehensive review of, or a sampling, I should say, of peer communities to Waupaca, and we pulled their debt policies, and we compared that to the city's debt policy. And a couple of things sort of stood out. Most communities, or really all communities that we sampled, take a look at the total valuation of the city in establishing a debt limit. And the city's policy had taken the total valuation but backed out the value of TIF districts. So we weren't capturing the full value, we were only capturing the value outside of TIF districts in the city. And then also we found that a lot of components were common with that. For example, Waupaca policy says that no more than, or that a debt issue will not exceed the useful life of the asset financed, and that it will never exceed 20 years. And that's pretty consistent with other policies that we've seen throughout the state. Just as a brief reminder then, the existing policy of the city was put in place about 10 years ago or so. And it's really four-pronged. It says that there's a limitation as to the amount of debt that can be outstanding that's tax supported. So that would back out any TIF or any debt that has offsetting revenues, like from a TIF district or from an enterprise such as a water system or sewer system. And the city's existing limit on that was much more restrictive than what state statutes allow. It said that the city would issue no more than half of what's legally allowed under state statute, but based on the valuation of the city excluding TIDs. State statute says that you can include TIDs in that analysis, and that the limitation is actually 5% of the total value is the amount of principal that can be outstanding for general obligation debt. The city's was set at 2.5%, so about 50% of what the state would have allowed. The second part of the policy said that the total general obligation debt could be no more than 3.75% of the valuation, excluding TIF districts. So that's an attempt to capture levy-supported debt plus debt that's supported by funds other than levy, like water system revenues, sewer system revenues, and so on. And then the third component of said that the annual debt service, that's principal and interest, expenditures could not exceed 15% of the city's annual budget. So we took a look at that also. And as soon as this PowerPoint comes up, I can show you some of the changes that came, or some of the metrics we were asked to take a look at that came out of direction from the last meeting. I'm sorry. Oh. Or I can just tell you what I found. So I reran the analysis, or we ran an analysis saying, let's include TIF districts. Yeah, so the analysis we took a look at said, let's include the TIF districts in the total value, which would bring the city more in line really with state statutes. But let's keep the let's take a look at what happens if we keep that percent limitation at 2.5%. So it just means that if you take the total value of the city, multiply it by 2.5%, that's going to give you a number. That number would be the maximum amount of principal that could be outstanding at any time. So using that calculation, the max and the current values, the current debt of the city, the maximum debt limit that could be, the maximum debt limit would be $9.9 million.
This is on page 14 of.
Oh, they have that. Okay.
They do have this.
Okay. So, yeah, I apologize. I wasn't aware you had this. So the principal that's outstanding, including payments this year, is about $3.1 to $3.2 million. That leaves a difference if this became policy, that would leave a difference of $6.7 million in available principal that could be issued while remaining within the policy. Then point number 2, again, looks at all of the GO debt of the city, not just GO debt supported with tax levy. And if using TID in instead of TID out, that's TID including the value including TID, gives you a maximum debt limit of $14.9 million. Currently, including this year's payments, the city has about 12.2 outstanding, so the remaining capacity under that test is $2.7 million. So for practical purposes, because that's the lower number of these two tests, if both of these become policy, the practical limitation here would be the $2.7 million.
Which program is it?
It's the one with the date on it. Oh, it's under Waupaca folder. That one on top.
Right there?
Yep. And then, so those were the two items that we were asked to take a look at coming out of the last meeting. And then on the second page, which we're pulling up in just a minute here, but we also looked at point number 3 is the annual debt service on tax-supported debt. This, per your current policy, is limited to 15%. So we took a look at if this were changed to increase up to 25%, what would that do to the limitation? If you could just go on this page, right?
I can't see it from here because the
Page down. So anyway, so just working down the schedule, the limit for annual debt service, the 25% of your general fund revenues would be about $1.13 million. In 2014, your tax-supported debt service payments, and this means principal plus interest when you see the debt service, that's $516,664. So you would be under your existing policy by 620, or you would be under a potential new policy by $622,000. And then the next line down says, well, what's the total tax-supported debt that we pull in here? There's some debt issues the city has outstanding that are supported with tax levy but are not general obligation. So they are competing for budget dollars. So I just pulled in those figures, and that's the $965,000. If we go through your budget, that's the amount you would see that's really tax levy supported debt. So using a 25% test, you remain under the limitation here by $172,825. So not all communities use this percentage test as part of their formal policy. Some will just focus on one component out of the 3 that I just went over. Others use all 3 in conjunction because using all 3 would pull in really an annual budgetary impact, and it would also pull in a more comprehensive, a more broad global view, a longer-term view in terms of the amount of debt that's outstanding, not just looking at annual payments, but looking at total principal and interest outstanding, or principal outstanding. So these types of changes would bring the city's debt policy more in line with what we see from peer communities to Waupaca, and it would also help provide guidance to city staff as they develop considerations or recommendations or projects for the city to consider. It would frame the discussion in the concept of affordability under the city's policy or potential new policy. And it's also very important to stress that leaving your policy as it is or changing the policy or taking out bits or pieces in no way takes away the authority of the council. All projects still must come back to council for approval through a vote, and all financings still have to be voted on through the council. So the policy isn't somehow providing blanket authorization for anyone to do anything. It's really just that's a policy document. So I'd be glad to try to answer questions or expand on anything that I've covered so far, if anyone would like.
So, Brad, just so I understand, if we go back to the prior page, you don't need to go back, but you would take just to have an idea of what we would have available to us, we would take the lesser of those 2, but then how does the second page that you just talked about fit into that? That's the annual payments?
That's right. The second page are annual payments. The communities that use sort of the 2-prong approach on the policy, They're doing that intentionally so that, because debt structures can be played with. So if we could, a community could issue $5 million of debt and not make any principal payments for 5 or 6 years. Well, that's going to show, the debt service payments on that are going to be much lower in those first, 3 to 5 years. It's not going to show up in the budget. You're not going to be making principal payments. So the first 2 points really covers any structuring that would go on, that because you're looking at the absolute total principal outstanding regardless of the year it's paid. And then the third piece here looks at the annual budgetary impact as a limiting factor in the policy.
And again, just, I'll pass it on to others here, but, so if we're looking at number 3, which was the one that's on the screen right now, again, you would look at whichever was a smaller amount?
Well, I mean, if this is adopted as policy, yeah, right. And it's, typically you would typically see this type of policy address only general obligation issues. That bottom half of point number 3 here just recognizes that there is some debt of the city outstanding that's not general obligation, but is supported by a tax levy. So I wanted to reflect that here so that that's not, so it's not forgotten.
Because, 172,000 would, on a 20-year term, would buy a lot of debt. Much more than the 2.7 that, I didn't do the figuring, but, that's going to be much more than the 2.7 million, seems to me.
Anybody else have any questions? I think you're all looking it over to see if you have any questions. You look at page 13, that's just working with a different percentage, which is our current percentage. And it says current in writing at the top there. So you could see how matters then would change if you were thinking that that those percentages could be changed, and also that we should include TID in on this.
Brad, what's the reason some put TID in and some put TID out? Is there just a preference, or is there a good foundation for one or the other?
Well, I think there's a stronger foundation for TID in. I mean, it's consistent with state statutes. It's what I see in the communities, other communities throughout the state that are both clients of mine and clients of other firms. They're using TID in. When TID out was used for the policy of Waupaca, the feeling was let's let those TIFs develop on their own, and let's not use the benefit of the TIF growth until the TIF is closed. When it closes, it then shifts from TID out over to the TID in side. So if anything, it was a more conservative policy than what we see as sort of the standards throughout the state.
That's kind of what we have now with the percentages too. I think we were kind of erring, seems like, more on the conservative side. If we want to bump it up, then you're adding to your debt limit. I presume we made that decision for a reason.
Yeah, it can speak in general that community, for example, this limitation that's the 2.5% of TID out, that's half of what the state would allow you under state statutes. So communities set that limit because it's always important to keep some sort of reserve. If there'd be an emergency that the city absolutely had to access the bond market for some type of emergency, you would have the ability to issue debt to do that. That's the reason that we see communities of your size especially limiting themselves to about 50% of capacity.
But as you said, Brad, I think this is important too, is that the state policy is with TID in, so when we did the 2.5% before, that was even actually a lower percentage if you were to look at
Yeah,
that figure with the TID in versus TID out.
Correct.
good point.
Yeah, I mean, we're still, if we're at 2.5% with TID in, we're still at half of what the state allows us to be at.
Right.
Brad, in that example there, the top half, 2014 tax-supported annual debt service, that is just tax-supported general obligation bonds, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The next one down, IMC includes Henriksen Center and Library, and those are CDA bonds in addition to general obligation?
Yes.
Okay. But they're all tax-supported?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things here. One, is this confusing? Does council understand number 2 and number 3 and how that works? Or 1, 2, and 3, I'm sorry. 1, 2, and 3, do we understand, you know, like with 1 and 2, it's either 1 or 2, whichever is the lower amount. And then, of course, with number 3, that would be the annual amount that you could actually borrow and still be below what's allowed. We understand that? Does that make sense to us?
Mayor, if I could just clarify on point number 3, that's the annual amount of the payments. So not the annual amount you could borrow. It's,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, number 1 and 2 is the annual amount that we could borrow, and number 3 is our annual amount of our payments.
Right.
Right. And as Henry said before, the annual amount of payments would buy a lot more than what we're allowed to in either 1 or 2 up above. So you'd have to look at all 3 of those before you could be able to make sure that you're within the parameters of this debt policy. Brad, is it important for us to have in here the dollar amount that state law would allow us to have? I mean, would that be something that we would change on an annual basis?
Yeah, I mean, the way I would see that, I would anticipate the policy as written is that it references the valuation and the percentage, and not actually a policy of hard dollar amounts. So then each year, each budget cycle that we're preparing, either for a financing or looking at your debt service budget, then we run the analysis and we can provide that information to say, well, here's a snapshot of where you are per your policy.
Okay, well, that makes sense, because otherwise we'd have to change it each
Yeah, you'd be changing it every year.
I want to touch on what Scott asked too before when he said, well, why did the city go, and I don't remember the year that we did this. What did it say for the year that we did the debt policy? But remember, we were in different times back then too, and we felt that the TIF districts were going to be able to generate enough revenue to pay off all debt and so on. So we were very, very comfortable with having TID
out.
not being included in there, because and times have obviously changed now, and we are using tax dollars and enterprise dollars too, water and sewer money to pay the debt in the TIF too. So again, it makes sense now to put TIF back in because we're using tax dollars to help pay for that.
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So when we're using this, if we adopt this policy and we're actually using it, it makes sense then that we would be, let's say, for instance, if we're looking at capital for next year, we would use our 2015 equalized value or estimated equalized value I guess the point I'm getting at is we borrow in one year, and we start to make payments in the following year for a project or construction. Is that taken into account in this evaluation? Because you would want to be looking at the snapshot of the year where you're starting to make that payment and not have to wait for your debt to drop way off and then wait another year to borrow and then another year to pay. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. What John is saying is that number 3 maybe doesn't necessarily happen in the same year that you borrow money. Because you might borrow the money in 2014, but you're not making the payment until 2015. And do we want those to work together in the same year? And how would we do that?
Oh, yeah. Most communities really don't try to do forward-looking analysis like that. They'll look at the current valuation. So, like, if we were borrowing right now, we'd look at 2014's valuation, because the 2015 doesn't come out until August 15th. And then we would look at the total debt outstanding as of the day you're borrowing. So if there were debt payments made this year in March or April, we could back those out. But for payments that are due later in the year, we would actually include those in the policy. And the reason most communities look at it that way is it takes out any subjective, inputs to the test. I mean, you're looking at hard data that is quantifiable, and it's not based on forward-looking projections.
But what's going to happen, though, is in 2020 we have a substantial drop in debt. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. 2019 is still at the level we're at. 2020 is a drop. So do we have to wait to 2020 to experience that drop to then make a decision in 2021 to borrow to make a payment in 2022? That's what I'm kind of getting at.
Right.
And so in that respect, I think that I don't think we necessarily want to do that.
Well, the hard part with this, though, is it's we have to remember too that we have to, although we can borrow this much money, we have to figure out how to pay for it.
Right.
So if we don't include number 3 in here, we're not taking into consideration our revenues that we have in that current year to be able to pay that debt.
Yeah, and I agree with all 3 of these tests. I guess my comment is that we need to be able to look forward. If we know a debt's going to get paid off in a certain time, a certain date, and we know what those payments are, it should allow us to backfill in debt, is what I'm getting at. And be able to backfill in debt instead of waiting to experience that substantial drop off and then have to wait another year to borrow and another year to construct and then pay or whatever, So that's what I'm getting at, is ability to look at this and be able to backfill.
Yeah, I understand.
Ideally, that's what you've talked about, Brad, is that we're really better off having a more constant rate of debt payments and still get the projects needed that we need to get done.
Yeah, and I think part of that, John, just has to do with the timing of the payments throughout the year. I mean, I don't anticipate that there'd have to be a 1-year gap where debt drops and then there's a spike up. And part of this go hand in hand with a lot of communities do long-term capital planning, and we do some of that here. The city does some of that. So in that capital planning, you kind of pull in those drop-offs and the future potential debt issues, the future tax levy support, and just come up with a balanced plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Brad said this, but I think it's important to say it again, is that, I mean, ultimately, when and if we decide to borrow money, council has to approve that, but we obviously have to look at the debt policy before we even consider doing a borrow. And I mean, and along with that too, within our budgets, we obviously have to make sure that we can afford that with what we're willing to pay. I mean, whether it's within the current budget, whether it's within raising the taxes, whatever that case might be, to be able to borrow money if we believe that that's necessary to do. Again, this debt policy puts us into a situation that compares us to many other communities that Brad has told you about already, and it really fits what what we're seeing recently versus when this debt policy was first put in place. Again, I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here at all. I think we're just changing it so that TID is in instead of TID out, basically.
I have a question. If we, right now we're at 15%, if we stayed at 15 and didn't bump up to the 25% and went to TID in instead of TID out, I mean, right now we're already exceeding our policy, correct?
Yeah, that 15% test, the city is exceeding that.
And then if we were to go TID in instead of TID out, it would put us even further below, correct?
You would increase your borrowing capacity if you used TID in. Yeah.
Mayor, are we looking to make a decision on this tonight?
Well, I mean, it's on the agenda and you have the ability to do it. It's going to be helpful, obviously, to have a decision before we start the budget process for 2015, which will be August, mid-August. So do we have time to think about it and vote on it at a later meeting? Yes, we do. If you feel comfortable with making the decision tonight, you have that ability to do that.
Thank you.
Well, Brad, you sure know how to quiet down a room.
Can we take this in steps? I guess I would like to move that we adjust our borrowing capacity by allowing TID in rather than TID out.
Second.
Okay. So the motion is to change our debt policy so that it includes debt or TID in instead of TID out. Simple as that. And that was a motion by Mayo, second by Fensky.
And that's on factor 1 and 2 metric, test 1 and 2?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on that? Scott, go ahead.
So that, Brad, in effect, if we do this, raises our capacity, borrowing capacity without raising the percentage, right? I mean, just with the TID in, it gives
Yes.
us
Yes.
just a little less, obviously.
Yeah, it raises it. I mean, you'd have a capacity of about $6,750,000 with using TID in for your levy-supported jet, and then $2.7 million for including all general obligation debt. Mm-hmm. So that, and that's higher than what would be a TID out.
Right. So we're kind of maybe we're angling towards a bigger capacity, but maybe we're still erring a little conservative because all we're going to maybe do is TID in and not raise the percentage. I guess that's kind of a compromise, maybe.
Anybody have any other discussion? No? Sandy, you want to call the roll?
Okay. John Lockwood,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Steve Hackett, Deb Fensky,
Aye.
Jillian Peterson,
Aye.
and Paul Hagan.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, Paul, you kind of let us down that, so you tell us what your thoughts are next here.
My understanding of this is we are now including the TIDs, but that doesn't necessarily, by policy, allow us to borrow any more money because we're at the 15% level. because our payments will exceed the policy.
It's correct, Paul.
Yeah. So, I would like to move that we move the budgetary constraints from 15% to 25%.
Okay, so that would be number 3 that you're looking at, where currently our debt policy limit is 15%, and Paul is making a motion that we change that to 25%.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Mayo, second by Hagan, that we do as such. Any discussion? Again, we'll have Sandy call the roll.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
No.
Jillian Peterson,
No.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
John Lockwood,
Aye.
Deb Fensky,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
and Dave Peterson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 2 noes, motion carried.
Okay.
Can I ask
Anything
a
else
question?
with
I got-
the debt
I have-
policy?
I had
Yes,
a
Paul.
question.
Brad.
Yes,
Okay.
Brett. I understand the 5% state limitation on the for the tax-supported debt limit, but is that the same for the total GO debt?
Actually, the state statute is written that the limit is 5%. General obligation principal outstanding shall not exceed 5% of the city's equalized value. So if the GO debt is supported by tax levy or some other source, the state doesn't take that in consideration.
So what is the rationale behind the 3.75 of total GO debt and only 2.75 of tax-supported debt?
The 3.75 is going to effectively limit the city to 75% of statutorily allowed capacity. So that's that gap if there'd be some sort of an emergency that the city needs to access the bond market.
I was just wondering why the difference, the 1.25% difference in those two scenarios.
The 2.5% recognizes the burden on taxpayers from the debt payments and limits that to half of allowable capacity. The 375 recognizes that a portion of the debt, up to 25% of the city debt, GO debt, might be supported by payments other than taxpayers.
Okay, thank you.
Good. That's a good question. Anybody else? All right. Thanks, Brad.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you.
your coming up here. Safe trip.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on then to, this is also unfinished business. It's on page 16 of your packet. This is the building inspector mileage reimbursement. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, but Brennan's bringing that back for us.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. This is just a follow-up action from last meeting. At the last council meeting, you guys approved the contract with the Village Wild Rose for contractual services for building inspection. As part of with that, I had bring this back to increase John's mileage reimbursement from 150 to 175. That doesn't, again, include he does use his personal vehicle, will be doing the inspections for Wild Rose, and he has increased his mileage around town here with more code enforcement. Looking at when he was hired in 2009, it was at 250, 275, and gas is about another $1 more than what it was back in 2009. So just looking for a small increase in his gas reimbursement. This was included within the 2014 budget.
Question. I guess I don't understand why we pay him a lump sum per month rather than using the IRS reimbursable rate. Are any other employees handled that way?
All department heads, I'm going to look to Henry, but all department heads have a lump sum payment per month. Most of them.
Well, all that are using their private vehicles for...
I can tell you why, Alan. We've talked about this during the budget process and also talked to the department heads too. This is a dollar amount that they receive and they do not have to be accountable for it. So it is included in their W-2 wages, and they don't want to do mileage logs and get reimbursed for it, even though they would probably get much more if they were to be reimbursed for their actual mileage.
Okay.
So they've chosen, now maybe they might change their mind at a future time, but right now they've chosen to just take the lump sum, include that in their W-2 income as ordinary income, and not get the reimbursable amount.
Okay, the other observation I had is that you're asking for basically a 16% increase, even though the gas has gone up something like 30+%, and I don't know if that's equitable.
So Mr. Keelan's asking for you to give him
Yeah,
more.
particularly if he's going to be driving more miles too.
In the 2014 budget, and when I had spoken with John last year, the budget actually included all the way up to $200 per month for his reimbursement, but we were going to do it as a staggered amount within the budget. Because of the contract services with Wild Rose, that seemed as a good time to increase his mileage reimbursement. It was partially going to be an incentive because I had increased his requirement to go around and do code enforcement more than what he had done previously, so it was going to be looking at a staggered approach. So I looked at utilizing at least 175 right now, and if the continued code enforcement and I guess the rate of return on enforcement within the community and everything else was positive, to look at maybe increasing it again later this year as a possibility.
Brennan, do we have Mr. Lust track how many miles he's driving? How do we know this is the right number? I mean, how do we know how many miles he's going?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a legacy of where we've been through 15 years. I can speak to my time here. I think probably twice in that 15-year period, we bumped the department head's compensation for mileage up to take into account rising costs of operation. And I don't know that we got it to the point where we were trying to peg it to the inflation on fuel and everything. It was just trying to get it at a level that was acceptable. The employees felt it was fair, and we just moved on. We don't want to keep track of the miles.
But don't we need to know the miles to know that this is the right number?
If he were taking the IRS reimbursement rate, that would be the equivalent of about 300 miles a month. Okay?
At 53 cents a mile.
56 and a half.
Yeah.
Right. So does he drive 300 a month? I don't know. Understand too that it's taxable. So it's really not apples and apples comparison.
We can, right now, the policy is that they are not accountable, which means that they do not have to turn in a mileage log. That's not what's being requested tonight.
Right.
John, if you would like them to be accountable and have to turn in mileage logs, that would be something that we would bring back to council at a future date to find out. I know you're trying to figure out whether it's justified to increase it or if it's not enough.
I mean, either they should do it or we should do it so we know what we're paying for, right? But right now we don't know. We're just saying, hey, are you okay with $150?
I'm with
yeah,
you.
That sounds good.
I'm with you on that, John. I think we should have some more accountability on this.
We can do whatever we want, obviously, if we want the people that are receiving this mileage reimbursement to be accountable and to fill out mileage logs, yes, we can require them to do that if they want to get reimbursed. We can do that.
Well, don't we?
But again, this is different than what we're talking about tonight.
Sure.
I mean, so let's stay on this track. If you two want to talk about this at a future time, this would be something that we'd have to do in next year's budget, because we don't have it budgeted for this year.
Well, don't we know where he's going? Don't we have record of, oh, he went to this building today, so we could have a general idea of what those miles are? I mean, I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just looking for what's the basis behind this number, which we should have.
Go ahead. No, we shouldn't have it. I'm sorry. No, we shouldn't have it. This This is a dollar amount that we gave the employees. No strings attached. They could drive 0 miles and he's still gonna get the $150. We agreed to that. Now, if you wanna change it, you know, I'm not yelling, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, this is what it said, this is what it says. So if they don't wanna drive at all, we're still giving them $150 or $175 a month.
I think the city's getting a tremendous deal on this. If we try to actually document mileage, I think we're going to have to increase the reimbursement to the department heads substantially. At 20 miles a gallon at current gas prices, $175 per month covers about 1,000 miles. If you start including wear and tear and tires, and which the IRS at 56 cents a mile, I think when they actually log their miles in and we got to reimburse 56 cents per mile, this number is going to go up substantially. If the employees are satisfied with this, and the city's satisfied with this, I think actually the city's getting a pretty good deal on it. Rather than have employees having to log every mile in, it's a pain in the butt, and they don't want to do it. I think if they do it, they're going to be going through a lot more work and doing it. Not that that's a tremendous amount of work, but it's more work, and it's going to cost the city more money. So it's a lose-lose. It'd actually be financially probably win for the employee, but I think we've heard loud and clear that they don't want to do that, even though they may financially make out on it.
I guess I'm not looking for us to save more money. I'm kind of going down the path that Alderman Keelan went down, like, hey, is this fair for the employee? Yes, they agreed to it, but does that make it right? I mean, and we should have come up with a number to know, like, okay, they're going about this many miles on average a month. That's how we came up with this number, right? I mean, how do we come up with that number?
Mayor, just so the council's aware, this does include travel within the county. This reimbursement, we are not reimbursed for travel to any cities or meetings within the Waupaca County. That's covered in this dollar amount.
I don't have a problem with the number. I'm just trying to think of how we came up with that number and if this is a fair number. That's all.
Yeah, we would have to do research on that, and again, that's why I was trying to get away from it. If you want to talk about mileage reimbursement, let's put it on next month's agenda, next 2 weeks' agenda, 2 months' agenda from now, and give the staff the opportunity to look at the history of it, for one thing, and then maybe even Henry at one of his staff meetings could discuss this with the people that are getting mileage reimbursement and see if this is something, the direction they want to go. I mean, obviously, we can direct them any way we want to, but let's see what they want to do too here. So again, we're talking about raising John Lust's monthly mileage allowance from $150 to $175. The other items that we're talking about really are not pertinent at this time.
I'd make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Hagan, second by Olson, that we increase John Lust's mileage reimbursement from $150 a month to $175 a month. And I'm sorry, it says in here too, retroactive to June 1st. You're okay with that, Eric and Paul? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Now, would you like to see this on a future agenda, or do you guys want to think about it?
I just thought there'd be some information on it. I mean, I'm not looking to open a can of worms here, Mayor. I just thought since we were talking about this, that there'd be some data behind it. And if employees are happy, city's happy, is it fair? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of the city's resources I really want to put into this, because that costs us money too.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, think about it. You think about it, let us know if you want to put it on the agenda. You certainly have every right to do that.
Thank you.
Okay? Alan? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, let's move on then. Thank you, Brennan. Let's move on to new business. We have a license report number 1228. This is an operator's license for a Dusty Nelson. Chief, you want to just set us up a little bit on this?
Yeah,
It's
this
on
is-
page 17 through 23 of your packet, everybody.
This is actually a renewal bartender's license, not a typical new applicant that we get throughout the year. Every year, these expire at the end of June, so all the bartenders have to reapply. During that time, I do background checks, and on this particular one, found that he does have a fourth OWI pending, and the three previous are convictions for OWI. Granted, they're back in '06, two in '06 and one in '03. This one coming in March of this year. And since it is a renewal, we can look at any pending, my memo refers to a pending arrest record, and that's based on an opinion from the league, and that's how they worded it. A pending arrest record is, this is a documented and noted arrest for a pending criminal traffic charge. So that's really what it's referring to. And typically we would only look at convictions. However, the law does allow us to look at pending criminal charges. In this case, it would be a fourth offense. Now, if this had come through as a new applicant with 4 OWIs, looking again at the matrix, that would probably fall outside of that licensing guideline. He was given a notice. I'm not sure if he's here. My intent was actually to ask for a suspension based on that, but I don't think I gave him proper notice in my memo. Doesn't really address the fact that I would be requesting a suspension, which would be effective tomorrow. So at this point, I guess we were just looking at the licensing year, having it expire at the end of June, and a non-renewal.
So do you want a motion to deny 1228?
I'm just giving you the information. I'm not making a recommendation. I'm just saying that it does fall within the guidelines of non-renewal for a fourth offense OWI.
Well, you have 3 options here. You can recommend to approve license report number 1228, deny license report 1228, or do nothing.
I would move to deny license report 1228.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Fensky, second by Olson, that we deny license report number 1228, which is an operator's license for Dusty Nelson. Any discussion?
This doesn't mean that he can't be a bartender, right? It just means that he can't be the only.
Right, he cannot be the sole licensed bartender on premise. If there is another licensee present, he can bartend.
And he also does too, Chief, if I remember right, have the ability to reapply in, what is it, 60 days? Is that
6 months.
6 months, okay. I had a 6 in there.
Do we know what capacity he works at Nelson Strike Zone? Is he,
Is that where he works?
isn't it? Isn't that what the license is applied for?
It says on the license
Does
application.
it? I didn't, yeah, okay. I guess I wasn't gonna
No,
say.
We don't know.
I don't know. He was given a notice to appear tonight to answer questions.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Must not want it.
Okay, you've heard the motion and the second. I have not heard any further discussion.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
What, in the event that he would not be found guilty or convicted, because this is in process, correct?
Right.
Okay, so if there's not a conviction for this fourth offense, do we have the ability to come back and grant this license prior to 6 months? That would only be fair.
Really?
Well, if it was a renewal and he's not found guilty of this arrest for some reason, then wouldn't you think it would be fair that we would readdress this?
I wouldn't vote for this, but you could address it.
Happened to innocent before proven guilty.
He's
That's
got
what I'm saying.
3 other ones.
That doesn't
Yes.
apply in
From
this
the-
proceeding.
It doesn't apply in
apply.
this
And-
situation
and-
because he had a license with those 3 other ones.
Yes.
If he's not convicted of this fourth offense because it's in process, do we look at it again because we would look to deny it now based on his arrest versus the conviction, which may or may not happen.
It's still vote no.
I guess I'm addressing this at you, Mayor, or what your opinion is on this.
Well, I mean, again, I think you have to look at it as, exactly as you said, Paul. I want to make sure we understand that he did have a bartender's license with the 3 previous OWIs. So this 4th one, which is not final yet, is what's bringing it forward here for denial. So if he is not convicted of that, then obviously council would have to look at that again. Or do we say it's pending his conviction? I mean, this license,
I think you come back in 6 months, and if he's been found not guilty, then you take it up again. That's what
Okay.
the rule is. He can apply again in 6 months.
okay, let
Then
me,
he
let
would
me,
have a good record.
yeah, let me make another point though. This is a renewal which starts July 1st. So he will be able to work the rest of this month. And then he will, after starting July 1st, he will not be able to work.
Well, he can work, he just can't work without a licensed bartender. with
Yeah,
him.
but that's,
Now, what's,
yeah, I mean, there's not much need for a unlicensed bartender. You know, I mean, unless you're Wheelhouse or Harbor Bar or something like that, but yeah.
Opener and a closer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how did he get by with 3?
Because typically we're only looking at the last couple years. And if he
Oh.
got his licenses last year, that would have been 7 years. And the sentiment might have been, well, he had gone 7 years without any prior violations. Now this kicks it up to a different level, the new arrest. And that's what this is. It's not anticipating a conviction. It's not anticipating anything. It's just based on this arrest. So I'm not coming forward and say, well, I'm sure he's going to be convicted, so he should be denied. I'm sure he's been arrested, and I have documents and records to that. That's what this is based on.
Okay, so our policy is, and John Hart corrected me on that, once we deny that, then he would have to wait 6 months to be reevaluated if he would like to. So no matter what, if we vote to deny him tonight, we are waiting, he would have to wait 6 months to reapply.
But if you vote to okay him tonight and find out it is the 4th, take it away then, right? Once you granted it, it's there?
Right, for the year.
Chief, there is evidence that he was intoxicated at this arrest.
According to the police report, yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion, questions? Okay, so if you vote aye, you are voting to deny license report number 1228 for Dusty Nelson. Okay? Everybody understand? Sandy will call the roll.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Deb Fensky,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Jillian Peterson,
Aye.
John Lockwood,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
and Dave Peterson.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, moving on to license report number 1227. These are the remaining then operator's license that were applied for since the last meeting. Again, you can see from on page 24 that these are pending background checks, chief's approval, and payment of any fines that are owed to the city. So again, if you make this motion to approve, you would make that with all of those items pending.
Move to approve license report number 1227 with all those items pending.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Lockwood, second by Hackett, that we approve of license report number 1227. Any discussion?
If some of these are denied or any one of them, do we have to come back and vote, or are they just automatically? Do we have to vote again if they're found with background not suitable?
I can answer quickly. The backgrounds are done on all of them, and the backgrounds are fine.
Oh,
I think the only issue would probably be any pending fines. which they couldn't issue a license anyway until that's paid.
Yeah, we wouldn't issue it, Scott, until they're, and that's been quite effective. It's been a good policy the last few years.
Sounds good.
But the answer would be if there was a background check that
Yeah.
we would not issue the license, so the person would have to come, they asked for an operator's license, so it would have to be denied.
Yeah, I was just questioning if we had to convene again and re-vote on it or anything, no, so, okay.
All right, we're voting on license report number 1227. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We have the 2014-16 Cross Connection Control Program Service. Don Edelbeck.
Okay, we are just finishing up our first contract with Hydro Design. 2012 to 2014, we had approximately 311 connections that were inspected for commercial industrial. Cross-connection control is a situation where our potable drinking water system is connected in some manner to a contaminant source, a wastewater source, or a contaminant tank in an industrial area, something that can get into our drinking water system through back siphonage. So this DNR has required cities to implement cross-connection control inspection programs. We elected 2 years ago to contract with Hydro Design. We took bids at that time and received a couple different bids, and we selected Hydro Design. They have now gone through and inspected the majority of the city in commercial and industrial services, so our connections. So approximately 311 connections have been inspected. They've issued compliance directives and working with those businesses, working with them to bring them into compliance with state plumbing code. This now is for the next 2 years. There's a reduction in services because we have approximately 188 connections remaining that need to be inspected and follow up compliance inspections. What they're proposing is a 2-year program of 94 inspections per year. The city performs all of the residential cross-connection control inspections. So when we replace out a meter or do work in your home, we do our own inspection of your home to eliminate any cross connections that are there at that time. Their proposal is for $833 a month for the 24 a month period, or $99.96 per year, or $19,992. Again, this is a reduced amount compared to what we were paying for the last 2 years because of the substantial reduction in connections. They've been a very good firm to work with. Our staff has worked well. Tina has spent a lot of time working with them. They're professional. This is what this firm does, and they're very good at it. And I think it's been a very good selection for the city to have them as our contractor. And I would recommend that we do proceed with this contract for 2 years at these amounts in the proposal. This contract starts on page 25, and on 26 is the executive summary.
I'll make a motion, we approve this contract
Second.
John just described.
Okay, we have a motion by Hackett, second by Hagan, that we approve of the Hydro Design contract for the years 2014 through 2016. It's actually 24 months, and an amount not to exceed $19,992 for that time frame. Any discussion?
John, where are the funds for this coming out of?
This is a water utility fund that comes out of that account. It's all water. And one thing to note too, I didn't mention that, but the Waupaca Foundry has not been inspected yet, and we've asked for a separate contract, and that's the next item on the agenda here. But they're the only business in the city that is being looked at as a separate contract because of the complexity.
John, once these inspections are all done, is that it then? Is it good for like a 10-year period, 5 years? Or
During their initial survey, during the initial inspections, they're put on a 2 to 5 year cycle, depending on the severity or risk level. So some of these businesses will need to be re-inspected on a 2-year program, some on up to a 5-year. And residential would be on a approximately 10-year. So that's all part of our program in identifying that. So there will be ongoing inspection for compliance.
Okay.
John, is there a fee to the businesses for this, or is this strictly?
No, there's no fee. It comes out of the water fund and is paid, by the water users through their water rates.
Anything else? Sandy will call the roll.
Deb Fensky.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Jillian Peterson.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
And John Lockwood.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, the next item is item 4 on page 36. This is specifically a proposal for the inspection and re-inspection and compliance inspections with Waupaca Foundry. As you can imagine, the complexity of the 3 plants on cross-connection control, a lot of it will probably, depending on how far advanced the foundry is, will rely on or require trying to track piping, labeling of piping. That has a lot to do with cross-connection control, but they will perform complete inspection of this plant for compliance. And this proposal is a hourly not to exceed $3,580. If the hours are not needed, if those dollar amounts or those hours are not needed, they would not charge that amount. Like I said, due to the complexity of the plant, this is the only separate proposal that we have, and I would recommend that we do take action on this for hourly not to exceed that dollar amount.
Okay, so your motion would include the hourly amount and then, as John said, and the amount not to exceed.
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Second?
We have a motion by Hagan, second by Lockwood, that we approve the cross-connection control program service with Waupaca Foundry and hydro design agreement with an hourly rate of $120 per hour with an amount not to exceed $3,580. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Jillian Peterson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
John Lockwood.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Deb Fensky.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
And Eric Olson.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, the next item is item 5. It's on page 38. We have 2 small water main projects we'd like to proceed with this year. Because they are public water main extensions, we will have to have plan profiles, plan specifications, and DNR will have to obtain a DNR permit for this. This project would be very similar to the project we had last year with Runway Drive Sewer, a minor project, but again, we have to have full design, engineering design plans for this. The first project is on Royalton Street. We had a water service leak, which was the city's responsibility underneath Royalton Street this winter by Riverside Park. And when we went to repair that line, we found the line had, the copper line was severely deteriorated. It was installed at the same time as 2 other homes in the adjacent to them. We anticipate those service lines are also going to be in poor shape. So the option is to bore a new line and take the risk on these other 2 lines because the main is on the south side of the road and the homes are on the north side. What we're recommending is a water main extension along the north side. It does cross over further to the west by the auto supply store. That main crosses from the north to the south side of the road. We would just extend that line out. We're looking at approximately 350 feet. We would then be able to tie each of those 3 homes into this new main. It's right in their front yard. And we think that's probably the smartest route at this point. The second item is Shadow Lake Drive and Shadow Woods Drive. This is the Bethany, in the backside of Bethany and the adjacent subdivision next to it. Presently, those are both on radial lines. So when we have a problem with any of those lines, we have to shut off that entire either length of road on Shadow Woods, or Shadow Lake and Shadow Woods, and we have had the entire Bethany complex out of water because of a problem we're having on that line. With a short 150-foot extension of that water main, we can loop those two lines and we can isolate main breaks or service leaks or whatever the problem is and backfeed, and we can keep all those other property owners and businesses and the business with water. When we do shut people off with water, there are issues of cleaning the line. We can cause rusty water problems, air in the lines. I mean, whenever you do that, it comes with issues. So to minimize this impact, it really is good planning and worthy projects for us. The proposal by Omni has done minor projects like this, and we found them to be the least expensive, would be an amount not to exceed $7,250. That would provide all design, all permitting, all DNR applications. It would not include any type of construction-related services, which we have handled, our staff has handled in the past. We would do here as well. There might be some minor construction staking. And if there's any easements needed, that would be an addition, although we may pursue a local surveyor for easements in lieu of Omni, which we've done both ways. So this would be for approval of design, full design services to bring us up to permitting, to allow us to proceed on this. The construction for this project, both of these projects would be included in our water utility fund, and we have monies in our operational fund for these minor projects. Just so you're aware, one of the homes on Royalton Street is still currently being fed by a garden hose from their neighbor. So it's something we do obviously want to proceed with, and why we're bringing forth this proposal now. As you know, we had 10, 15 homes this winter on garden hose service because of frozen lines that we couldn't thaw. But this is obviously for another reason that they're being served, because of their poor lateral under Royalton Street. So I can answer any questions you might have at this point.
Your crews will be installing the mains?
I'm not sure about that. We will have to see. We may install one, not the other, or we may contract it out. We got very good prices last year on the Runway Drive sewer project, and the concerns we have are depth. We can't really dig with our backhoe, so now we're contracting out. So I don't have that answer yet, but we cannot proceed either way without DNR permit.
Will there be any cost to these homeowners that the main runs in front of, like an assessment?
No, they have water main up in front of their property now. It's across the street, but it's in the public right of way. We would not be assessing them for any additional water main.
Okay.
And the Bethany project is a looping project to better operate there.
Okay, so if you approve this, then you would be hiring Omni and Associates to do this engineering at a cost not to exceed $7,250.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Peterson, that we approve the water main construction project with Omni and Associates for an amount not to exceed $7,250. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Jillian Peterson.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Deb Fensky.
Aye.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
John Lockwood.
Aye.
And Paul Hagan.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, the next item is found on page 50, and you'll have to bear with me here. I'll try to be short, but this is an agreement that is being drafted with the City of Waupaca and the Chain of Lakes Sanitary District. And as I've mentioned at previous council meetings, our 20-year agreement for wastewater treatment services is up in June. this year after 20 years. And that agreement allows the city to take the waste from the Chain Lake Sanitary District, of which the King Veterans Home is a customer of theirs. They pump it to our treatment plant, and we treat that waste. And that was going back 20 years ago, where our plant was expanded and improved. They actually each had treatment plants themselves. Those were closed, and improvements were made. So this large project brought waste, and it's been a very successful 20 years on both parties. We are at a point where we need to renew this agreement. I've reached out to Kempfer and Associates, who did the initial design on the treatment plant expansion 20 years ago. They drafted all of the documents and the agreement, and they have identified 17 areas that we would need to address with the new agreement. I've talked to the Chain Lake Sanitary District Chain Lake Sanitary District. They are supportive of the new agreement and would like to be part of that, and this is a cost share agreement for us to get to a new agreement. So there's two components to this, or I guess three components. The one component is working with Kempfer and Associates to draw up a new agreement. There are new aspects that we want to add to that agreement. There's discussion and cost sharing on different aspects of maintenance and language, and I can go through all the different aspects, but it's a pretty substantial agreement that we want to renew and update for the next 20 years, I presume. There's also what I'll call a cost of treatment study, and what this would be looking at our wastewater treatment plant and what is the actual cost to treat their waste. And we currently bill them on a couple different parameters. We bill them on a volume charge. So each month we calculate through flow meters, we calculate or read the flow of volume of waste, and there's a bill for that amount. Then a number of different pollutants. We look at those pollutants, we analyze their waste, and when they get billed on what we call strength of waste. So it's not just the volume, but it's also the strength of the waste, because it costs us more to treat a higher strength waste with more solids, with more phosphorus, with more nitrogen, those types of things. So what I'm suggesting is that we do an updated cost of treatment study, because there is the potential that we're underbilling them for the cost of treatment, that the waste and volume charges are too low. But if we do a treatment study, we will know on current charges, current rates, current expenses, what that actual rates are. And they have also agreed to cost share with us on that study. And to wrap that up, their consulting engineer they work with is called AECOM out of Stevens Point. And they felt that it would probably be important that once we draft all these studies and agreements, that their engineer have at least a look at it and give recommendation. And in this joint agreement with them, we've allotted $9,900 hourly not to exceed to prepare a brand new agreement. $8,900 to perform the cost of treatment study, which will actually look at our expenses, look at how we're treating, what the costs are. And they have done these before. They have done them for our facility as well. So I think working with Kempfer is really going to be worth our most cost-effective to work with Kempfer on this. And then we're allotting up to $1,000 hourly not to exceed for AECOM to do a review of that and give them comments, or us all comments back. I think that it's, and actually the copy I have here is actually signed by the president, Bob Ellis of the chain, that they've taken to their board, and they're supportive of a 50-50 cost share to get us to this next step. And I think that's great. And I think it shows the cooperative effort that we've had working with them through issues that we've had over the last 20 years and successfully address those issues. So the first step, I guess, tonight, Mayor, would be to vote on this agreement if the council feels it's worthy of cost sharing.
Okay, so let me understand. We, first of all, we're asking to extend the agreement until December 15th, 2014.
Yes, I'm sorry. That would be part of the agreement. Give us 6 months to work through these studies. If we get done in 2 or 3, that's fine. But we would like a 6-month extension of the current agreement as
Okay.
part of this.
So that's part of the motion. The second part of the and then continue, we would hire Camford and Associates to prepare a wastewater treatment service contract agreement, and that's, the full amount is $9,900. Then also Camford and Associates to perform a cost of treatment study of $8,900, and then AFCOM out of Stevens Point, who's really representing the sanitary district, to look over what Camford's done for an amount of $1,000. And our cost then on that would be a half of that, which would be not to exceed $9,900. And again, this would come out of the
Wastewater treatment sewer fund,
sewer
correct?
fund, right? Not out of the general fund.
That's correct.
Yep.
And this, what you're voting on now is just this cost share agreement, or this agreement with the extension. I have the engineering contracts as separate action items.
Oh, you just want to do the extension of the contract?
This
right now?
No, but you're just, what we're voting on would be just this one-page agreement to cost share. The actual Kemfer agreements are another item on the agenda, as far as approving us hiring them.
Are there different dollars amounts on those?
No. This agreement doesn't approve, you don't approve Kemfer, hiring Kemfer for this agreement. You're just approving cost sharing. The next item would be approving the engineering services agreement with Kemfer itself.
Okay, so let me take a step back then. We are asking to extend the wastewater agreement between the city and the what is it called again?
Chino Lake
The
Sanitary
Chino Lake Sanitary District until December 15th, 2014. And we agree, as well as we know that Chino Lakes has already agreed to cost share and each pay 50% of this cost.
That's correct.
That's what you want for your first motion.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
So move. Get it out of the way. Second.
I have a motion by Hackett, second by Fetsky, that we do as such. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Alan Keeland.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Deb Fensky.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Jillian Peterson.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
John Lockwood.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
And Dave Peterson.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, then, thank you. The next item, Mayor, is the approval of the engineering services agreement with Kemfer for what is called the City of Waupaca and Chino Lake Sanitary District contractual agreement preparation. So this would be taking our current expired agreement that is expiring and putting together, modernizing it, new aspects of it. We want to address a number of different things in here for possibly up to another 20-year extension. And these services would provide for that.
Okay, so John is asking that we enter into an agreement with Camford and Associates. We need a motion for that.
I'll so move.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Perchatsky, that council enter in an agreement with Camford and Associates to do a wastewater treatment contractual agreement preparation with an amount not to exceed $4,950. City share, $4,950. Any discussion?
I do have a question. John, do you know what on a volume basis, what percentage the chain sends to us?
It can vary between 25 and 30%. We typically have used 30 as in general discussions. It is seasonal, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But 30% would be a good response to that.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Sandy will take the roll.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Paul Mayo.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Eric Olson.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Jillian Peterson. John Lockwood,
Aye.
Deb Fensky,
Aye.
and Alan Keeland.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, and the last item I have is on page 66. This would be a cost of treatment study. We would reevaluate our actual cost and come up with recommended billing rates for volume and strength of waste charges that we would utilize with the chain for our future agreement. We'd need action on that as well.
I move for approval.
Motion by Fensky, second by Hagan, that we approve of the agreement with Camford and Associates to do a cost of treatment study for us at a city share not to exceed $4,450. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
John Lockwood,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Deb Fensky,
Aye.
Jillian Peterson,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
and Dave Peterson.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, so, John, let me ask you, we didn't do anything on this, what is it, AECOM? ACOM for that $1,000?
Yeah, the Chain of Lakes will work with them on that, and the agreement will allow us to cost share up to that dollar amount.
So we don't need to.
Yeah, we
do
wouldn't
anything.
we wouldn't contract with them directly. That would be the chain.
Okay, but we know that we're gonna end up having to pay.
Yeah,
500
and I think it's important that they do weigh in on it and get their comments. I think that shows good support for us to share with that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the annual inspection report for the licensed establishments in the city of Waupaca. Chief Koch?
It's just a memo that has all been done.
Okay. All right, and we do need to, we have it so that we're looking for approval on this, so.
Make a motion that we approve the annual inspection report from Chief.
Second.
We have a motion by Hackett, second by Keelan, that we approve of Chief Koch's annual inspection report of the city licensed establishments. Any discussion?
Yes. Chief, maybe I just don't get around enough, but where is Snappy's Liquor, Bait, and Pet Paradise?
That's a great question.
That is a good question.
Well, everyone knows where that is.
So in other words, you don't get around enough.
I was wondering where T-Dubs is.
It is hard to find.
I don't know. That's an annual list that is compiled by City Hall and Henry. I don't know. Now, if that's one residual from leftover,
It's probably, yeah, it's probably not the name of the establishment, it's the name of the.
LLC or something. No.
I will find out and email you directly in the morning, okay?
thanks.
Okay, sure.
Thanks, Paul, for the question.
Okay,
No.
all right,
It's a voice.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next, we have award of a bid for signage at South Park Phase 1. Henry?
Thanks, Mayor. This is the last major bid packet that would be before you for action. Just as background, we did a formal sealed bid process, and because we're the general for this project, we had about a dozen bid packets, and we did not get a bid for this packet in the original process, and this was one of 3 or 4 packets. So in accordance with our procurement, given the projected dollar amount of $4,000, we went out and got written quotes. And my memo summarizes it. The TLC sign came in at about $5,800. Custom fab and finishing prior to the project had expressed interest in doing something on that project, and they offered to do the sign, and they're donating the value of the labor, but they did not choose to bid and provide the cost of the actual sign. And if you look in the packet, there'll be a kind of a round, the city seal would be placed between the South Park lettering. So we went out, and the company we've been working with in our Parks Department, and Aaron helped me out with this, was Appleton Sign, and they provided a separate price for just the round piece, the round city seal. So the bottom line is the total cost of the bid, with the city supplying and purchasing and installing the 2 braille or the toilet room braille signs, that's $200, and then Appleton Sign medallion, as well as the cost of custom fab and finishing is going to be $1,462. So with the cost of the braille signs, it's another $102. So we're at $1,564 would be the total cost. So the award of the framing to the sign would be to custom fab and finishing, and then the city seal, which is a sandblasted sign, to Appleton Sign for $1,262.
And do we have to approve the $102?
Well, why, yes. We're going to purchase that separately and install them.
And who are we purchasing that from again?
Help me out. That's a not Appleton Sign. It's
No,
a
it's
standard.
it's a standard ADA compliance sign company, not from the area.
Okay, so we won't.
Well,
We
it's
don't know who we're
$102.
purchasing it from, so, I mean, it's $102 and.
Yeah. But it came in.
Tell us what we should do with that $102, because we don't know who to award the bid.
It would be for the purchase of the braille signs. If
Okay.
you want to give us an allowance of $102.
All right, there we go.
We'll purchase.
All right, you heard Henry's discussion on that. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the signage and the payment of $102 to a vendor to be named in the future.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Hagan, second by Keelan, that we approve of spending up to $200 to custom fab and finishing for a sign support to Appleton Sign in an amount not to exceed $1,262, and to an unnamed person up to $102 for the braille signs, with a total of $1,564. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
John Lockwood,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Jillian Peterson,
Aye.
Deb Fensky,
Aye.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
and Paul Hagan.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Thanks, Henry. Next, we have the South Park purchase flagpoles. This is Brennan.
And hopefully one of the last purchases for South Park. We did have, within the project budget early on, we had budgeted $1,500 for a flagpole for the new park pavilion. In discussing with Aaron and a couple other staff members, we thought it would be appropriate to actually install 3 flagpoles out at South Park, one with the U.S. flag, one with Wisconsin flag, and then one with Tree City, USA. We saw 2 bids from 2 different companies, one out of Appleton, one out of Plover, for the purchase of one 25-foot pole and 2 20-foot poles. Installation will be handled by the Public Works Department. I have consulted with them, and they have no issue. They did install the flagpoles over at South Park, or at Swan Park previously. Within the project budget, we were only considering 1 flagpole before, so we budgeted $1,500. With the change going to 3 flagpoles, we are exceeding that budget right now. Looking at the low bidder for this project, which would be Badgerland Flags, they came in with a cost of $2,270 for the 3 flagpoles. And then I'm also seeking an allowance of up to $400 for the purchase of 3 new flags for that facility as well. I believe we're going to be under that. I think the flags are usually 50 to 75, but I did not have a price on that. Where the additional money is coming from, we have had some savings within the project budget to date. We've had approximately $4,500 savings in the irrigation portion of it. We've also saved approximately $3,200 in savings with the city install of the roof and shingles and materials. And there is still approximately $11,500 left in the contingency fund to date.
Okay, so what Brennan's looking for then is approval of the purchase of this flagpole from Badgerland Flags at an amount not to exceed $2,270.
And the allowance up to $400 for the purchase of 3 new flags for the facility as well.
Okay.
I would so move.
Second.
Motion by Mayo, second by Fensky, that we approve of this motion. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Deb Fensky.
Aye.
Paul Mayo. Eric Olson.
Aye.
John Lockwood.
Aye.
Steve Hackett.
Aye.
Jillian Peterson.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
And Alan Keeland.
Aye.
10 ayes, motion carried.
Okay, we move on to, this is the addendum. We had 2 items on the addendum. We have a request from the Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce to hire Tip Top Shows to run carnival rides in the parking lot of the former St. Mary Magdalene Church on Badger Street. It'll be on Friday, June 20th, and also Saturday, June 21st of this year. You can see the times if you look on page 1 of the addendum. It might be on page 2, actually.
That's correct.
5 to 9 and 10 to 7.
All right, so you can see that on Friday they'll be running from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then Saturday they're running from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Jeff Anderson is here from the chamber if we have any questions of him. Anybody?
Yeah, no, being as that's privately owned.
Yes, Mr. Hagan. That's a good point. I did have a conversation with the representative yesterday who owns the property. If you remember, we kind of swap. We have an agreement with them that we will plow the parking lot, mow the grass, keep the walkway clear snow in exchange for being able to use it as a parking lot. And we've had that arrangement for 4 or 5 years. It's worked very well. We end up dealing with the owner's representative, and I spoke with him yesterday. He didn't see any problem. They approved this a couple years ago. I just have not heard back on him, so I think just to be, Mayor, if it's appropriate, safe to make your approval contingent on their approval. I don't anticipate that they will not allow it, but I think it's probably prudent to put that in the motion.
John?
If you remember last year, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, and maybe if you were here at the time, the issue of their generator running and odor from their generator, has that been addressed, or do you know?
Jeff Anderson from the Waupaca Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for considering this tonight. Last year we were contacted early on in the setup from a resident, or the manager of the Angeles Apartments, with one complaint from a resident about the diesel fumes that we thought was all resolved, and there was another complaint, and it was a bigger deal. It turned out that was they were complaining about the vibrations of the ride. It turns out that was actually street construction. So really, I contacted Mark, the manager of the apartments, yesterday. He does not see that it's an issue. And as I mentioned to him, and working with Tip Top shows, that generator would be placed again as far away from those apartments as possible.
All right. Thanks. You need a motion if, Henry, you want to say something first?
I'm sorry, Mayor. I know
Okay.
everyone wants to go. I did include some information in the packet. I guess my office would seek some clarification. I did not have a chance to kind of run this by our city attorney, but, you know, we do have a license requirement potentially for this. You know, it's not a circus. It's, is it a street fair or carnival's $25 a day? We come down, there's rides and amusements, $2 per day per unit. So should we charge the operator that? There is an exemption. It's on under exceptions, yeah. What'd you say? Yeah, no license. A license for individual rides and amusements, tent shows, or stands shall not be required if such are conducted as part of a circus, street fair, or carnival. Probably Strawberry Fest is a street fair. I guess I want a direction from the council on that, whether you want to charge them or just exempt them.
Did you charge him last year?
I do not know. I don't think we did.
I don't remember ever talking about it.
No.
Well, it's a chamber-sponsored event, correct? And that's part of this exception, and it even states Waupaca Chamber of Commerce sponsored group. So is that technically?
I guess. Because they're going to fall up under your liability insurance for the event, and then they're going to be required to have it through their state licensing.
Yes, correct.
For
Same as
that,
last year.
so, yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing exempt them.
I think it should be part of the motion if that's what you want, to exempt it.
I'd move
They
to.
are, let me just make one comment, John, before you do. They are doing this for a profit, obviously. I mean, if that makes a difference, yeah. Tip Top is not volunteering their money that they earn from this. They are making money for this, on this. So, go ahead.
I'd like to move to approve the Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce to hire Tip Top shows and exempt them from any permitting fees.
We have a motion by Lockwood.
Second.
Second by Prochatsky that we enter into an agreement with the Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce to hire Tip Top shows of Waupaca for carnival rides at the parking lot of the former St. Mary Magdalene Church and exempt them from any license fees. Any discussion?
Did you also want to put the contingency in that Henry talked about, that is getting the okay from the owner?
Sure.
Yes.
So who seconded that? I'm sorry. So what Alan is stating is what, and thank you, Alan, for correcting me, but that obviously we need the ownership in agreement with this, of that said property. Paul, sorry to interrupt you.
I'm not comfortable with the exemption. We have the excuse, I think, in prior years, we just didn't know about the fee. Now we know about it, and we're specifically exempting somebody from a profit-making business from paying a fee that's required by our ordinance. And I'm not comfortable with our reasoning for exempting.
Your Honor, the exception requirement only applies to regulation of food sales and whatnot. It's the section above. There is no exception under public entertainment of that provision.
So they would have to pay the $25. Okay. So.
I removed the exemption from my motion.
And Scott, you seconded it?
Yeah. Okay.
So there's two parts that we were reading here, and Henry was combining the two parts. And yeah, if you look on page 4, I was wondering the same thing, but you'll see where it does have license fees, and it does say that they need to charge $25 per day. So Jeff, if you would, if this gets accepted, make sure that Tip Top knows that they need to come to City Hall and get a license and pay the $50, I guess it would be, for their license.
Not a problem. I will do that.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Okay, next, this is also on the agenda. We have a request from, I'm
First
sorry.
Baptist.
Yeah, the First Baptist. I was gonna try and do it by name here, and I forgot her name already, but
Jill Zempel.
thank you. Is Jill here? Yeah, good. We have a request from First Baptist Church Christian School to use an area in the parking lot of the former Quick Trip property located at 219 West Fulton Street for the purpose of having a funnel cake concession during Strawberry Fest. And this on June 21st, 2014. So you're requesting Saturday only, right? Okay. Anybody, Jill is here if you have any questions of her. Discussion, council?
I guess the first question would be, I assume that the business in there would not be working on Saturday and not interfere with anything of our tenant?
Yeah, I mean, remember the Quick Trip property is split into, we rent part of it to the rural insurance, and then part of it is also still used for city purposes, so.
Oh, no, I did not recall that.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that this was going to be on the city part of that property, but I'm not sure. Or did you contact rural
I
insurance?
did contact Rural Insurance
Okay.
and talked to Chuck, I don't remember his last name.
McDaniel.
Okay, and he said, okay, as long as I had the city's permission.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Second?
We have a motion by Olson, second by Keelan, that we approve of this fundraiser by the First Baptist Church Christian School. Any discussion? Jeff, I'm assuming the chamber has no issues with this? Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, just a reminder that we do have a meeting next Tuesday. Brennan, you want to?
Yes, next week, Tuesday, I'll be presenting the draft strategic plan for economic development to the council. It will be held at 6:30 in library rooms A and B.
Okay.
That, again,
anything else?
6:30, not 6, just.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock. And anything else on that? Anybody else have anything good? The meeting tonight. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Keelan, second by Lockwood, that we adjourn till our next regular scheduled meeting, city council meeting, which is in 2 weeks. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. We're adjourned at 7:49 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for watching and attending.